Hi, and welcome to this week's episode. Okay, this week it's going to be a little different because I finally had the time to actually look through my own videos, and I obviously made the connection that the videos are too long and too boring. And the other thing I noticed is that I started changing my accent to my dad or someone because I'm trying to explain so many things in such a slow rate or whatever. But anyway, this video is going to be awesome because we're going to talk about some hot button stuff. We're going to talk about the auto industry because that's where Mr. Obama has been. Obama recently went to an auto industry, I think it was GM, and he had to talk with the people and all that. So we're going to discuss that a little bit. Then we're going to talk about, of course, everyone loves to talk about, which is race in America and how that's going. And we're also going to talk about some other world events that can affect us locally. Alright, so starting off, let's talk about the auto industry. Now, it is true that when I first heard about it it was 2009, I think, that at first instance I did say it was a bad investment. I didn't think we should invest in it, mainly because I basically lost my trust with the company because they knew what was coming. I mean, if they're good at their stuff, they knew that they were declining sales. Since the 80s, people have been getting fired from auto industry jobs, and I just lost that trust when they couldn't adapt and go for high mileage cars or something like that on their own. That I just didn't think that the government could make them do that. But I stand corrected because once I was told about the history of cars in America, I was obviously moved a lot by what I heard. I thought that the invention of the automobile and how Ford and all these companies, and it all just rushed into me. And when I heard Obama talk about the history of the car industry, I was all for it. I wanted to save those jobs. I wanted to make new jobs, even against my instinct of how they've been cutting employees steadily for since the 80s. But I still wanted to support them, and I have. And it's turned out to be a pretty good success because they've started to go green, and they're finally running at a profit. And I mean, it's been a tough year, but they've somehow tried to pull back and try to make ends meet. Alright, the second thing I want to talk about is race in America and how that lady was fired and then rehired or offered a different job. Look, as far as race goes, I think that I always just look at the future generation. I always have hope and praise for the future generation because they seem less racist and more multicultural and stuff like that. But it all starts at the home. And if the parents show signs of racism, it will stick to your children's head. But I've seen great progress, and for me, being the optimist that I am, I've seen such great progress that I don't really want to talk about it. I don't like segregation at all, but that's what I see is happening time and time again in uh, city inner school, public schools like that. And I see this unforced segregation between black kids and white kids and discipline in the classroom, which is almost non existent and something which you can't grow up in. You can't grow up in a school or an education system that doesn't have discipline and expect them to wear a tie and shirt to a business meeting some years later. You have to almost teach from a young age of how to deal with professional situations and private situations and public situations, and they have to be able to differentiate between those things. And I think there's only hope for the future, and I think racism will be less of a factor as we move on. It's a difficult subject. I don't have much to say about it, but I just see hope, and I hope that everyone else sees the same thing as I do. And the third thing I wanted to talk about is, well, it's linked to terrorism. It's linked to our military budget. It's linked to a lot of things, and I wanted to talk about it. It's called safe sex. And a lot of people don't want to say that word, and a lot of people just laugh when they hear duty or something like that. But we can't be that immature about this. It's a biological function. It's a healthy function to masturbate, to have sex, to use safe sex, to use condoms, and to use birth control pills. And we need to supply these things to our kids. Cause don't listen. I know it might sound dirty to you, but they probably have been doing more things than you can even dream of. So for us to actually educate our kids about sex and different kinds of sex and the repercussions and the responsibilities from sex, we need to get this to these kids fast, whether they choose a lifestyle like that or whether they choose whatever circumstance that they're set in, or whatever whoever they love or hate, they have to be able to know about their own bodies, how they work, and stuff like that. And I hope someone's doing something about it. And they're not. In some places in the US, I don't see much happening. And the sad thing is, it's happening around the world. And we're not helping people around the world to use condoms and safe sex and stuff like that. And it's going to come back to bite us. Because there's going to be overpopulation, there's going to be less food for more people, and that kind of mess is gonna have an impact on us later on. So before that happens and that scarcity of food, education, and stuff like that happens, we need to actually be a global leader of safe sex and birth control, and we need to actually make the world safer. Because there are places that are doubling their populations every few years. Sooner or later, they're going to be out of food, and they're going to start doing wars and stuff like that. We don't want that kind of a situation. So I hope that you all think about it a lot. What is right to talk about with your kids? Like, how do you talk about sex? How do you bring up the subjects and stuff like that? And these are all important things that we all need to work at. It's difficult. There's no one answer. It depends on who your kid is, how you are with her or him as a relationship before and after the talk. And these are stuff that we need to talk about instead of giggling about and ignoring until it becomes a problem in our house, in our world, or in our country. So I hope that we get around to being logical, intelligent people who are mature about sex and know what to do about it. And I know I would have benefited a lot when I was a kid if someone would actually teach me all those things. And I never had that, and a lot of kids don't have that. And let's face it, there's a lot of anal sex. There's a lot of anal sex as as a replacement to actual sex because of the fear of it. Well, no more. We don't need to talk like that. We can actually talk about anal sex. We can talk about vaginal sex. We can talk about relationships. We can talk about all that stuff, and that's what we need to get at. And I think a similar basis, we should talk about race the same way, because it starts at home, and that's where we need to stop this.